Welcome back, and we talk about a matter that the Full View spoke to you about just a week ago, and that is the Auditor General reporting that cash-strapped councils had spent something in the region of R1 billion on consultants to prepare their annual reports and financial statements. This, of course, revealing the Auditor General that 27 municipalities out of 257 received a clean audit. Now, that was between the 2019-2020 financial years. Heese is an economist at Municipal IQ, and Natashia Soopan, who is a SAICA Senior Executive for Public Sector and Enabling Competencies, join us now to talk about this. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much to you both for joining us. So perhaps let me just start with you, Ms. Heese. So in these times of crisis, has government or the state shown that it has the agility and robustness of public financial management systems to withstand the tests?
In short, no, unfortunately. I think, good evening to you and to your viewers. But essentially not. The problem really that we've seen is a focus on a number of areas and provinces where there's just been very serious failure. And ironically, where we've seen disclaimed audits, this is often where we've seen years of intergovernmental intervention administrations. So there's not only been a failure in the majority of our municipalities, but in those spheres of government that are meant to be supporting municipalities to get their houses in order.
And just to hear from you, Mr. Platt, just the Auditor General emphasizing the fact that it wasn't all bad news. I think there were 43 municipalities that showed some improvement out of the 257, but that some regressed. Has COVID-19 unintentionally created opportunities for the abuse or misuse of public resources, or has it rather exposed them?
Good afternoon to you and viewers as well. I think if we take note of what the AG has actually indicated is that the report that has been tabled actually only reflects the first 3 months of the pandemic. So it took into account until June. Obviously, there was so majority of that year would have been done pre-COVID. So I think if we look at that, the expectation would be that the internal controls were already weak prior to the pandemic, and the expectation is that in the next year it will probably be worse based on the lack of the ability of staff in finance divisions to be at the office to implement internal controls during the pandemic. So the full strength of COVID will only be felt in the next year of reporting.
Just how bad do you expect it to be?
Well, if we looked at the internal controls prior to COVID and we take into account all of the issues that was identified, we've noted that municipalities, many of the staff actually had to close the finance divisions. So looking at the internal controls and compliance with legislation to ensure that procurement was done properly would have been, I think, more affected. And we would most likely look at a lack of supporting information for many of these procurement processes. And I think this has also come through to, if you look at the COVID-19 special report that has been released by the AG, that there is this issue that has already cropped up in the PPE procurement.
Ms. Heese, the Auditor General saying that it is especially those who had a significant budget, who had unqualified reports. What is this symptomatic of?
I think, it's very interesting to look at the report. And I think every active citizen should try and make the effort to look at their own report in their own municipality and their province, because there's wide variation. I don't think we can generalize. We've seen some very large municipalities with large budgets struggling. And then in the case of metros, we've only seen one metro getting a clean audit. And then you see some small municipalities succeeding and getting clean audits. And and getting these for several years in a row. So I think the profile of those municipalities which are well managed is varying. The common thread, and this is what the AG calls for, is accountability and ethical leadership. I think it really comes down to a political issue and commitment to ensuring that we can have clean audits and unqualified audits.
You talk about political leadership, and she also spoke about a new leadership within the municipalities. But I think most importantly, Ms. Heese, is there a concerted effort to improve accountability and public sector financial management controls in this time of crisis?
I think the answer varies between different provinces. So we've seen provinces that are highlighted in the report, Limpopo at a political level and the Western Cape and Gauteng, both at a political level but also at a technical level, working quite hard to support municipalities. And as my colleague mentions, it's really very much a process. It's not something that can be scrambled together at the end, with the AG going above and beyond to assist in this process. So there are processes at work where there's political commitment and this filters down if there's institutional support to address the problems. The problem is, in many instances, we don't have that commitment. We have to look at whole areas like the Free State, the Northwest, and we have to ask where has it failed? Obviously, there's a failure at the municipal level. There isn't commitment to picking up issues raised by the AG. But there's, to my mind, a very fundamental failure in regional political structures to take municipal auditing seriously and to ensure accountability for failures that have been highlighted by the AG's report.
Ms. Soopan, if there is evidence that people are flouting supply chain management legislation, can we then talk about the importance of the composition of our audit teams in countering these practices? Are they strong enough? How does that occur? Is there enough consultation?
In terms of the audit teams, we would say that the AG's audit teams is currently strong. The whole issue falls back to the auditee, where we picked up that there is probably a lack of internal controls to actually comply with the legislation and the prescripts thereof. There's a lack of skills within the municipal space as well to actually comply. We've noted that based on the use of consultants, and this has come through strongly, where there's a lack of skills and a lack of internal controls, it actually brings through these issues that have been raised.
Tshepithi, we have run out of time because I would have liked to hear from you both about the role of technology specialists and, of course, the sector-specific experts for insights on the risks and operations of these organizations. But thank you very much to you both for taking the time to speak to us. Heese is an economist at Municipal IQ, and Natashia Soopan, who is SAICA's Senior Executive for Public Sector and Enabling Competencies.